Welcome to Arnie's Class Podcast. I'm Arnie Aniel. I'm an HR development consultant, an international public speaker, a workshop facilitator, a coach, and an educator. Life is a great opportunity, and we all learn life lessons every day. This podcast is all about those lessons. Lessons like gratitude, confidence, happiness, mindset, and a lot more. Learning without action is information. Learning with action is transformation. Join me, learn, and transform yourself into a better you. Life mates, are you looking for a new opportunity for your career? Are you looking for a job? Before you apply for a job, do you even know what's the difference between a CV and a resume? Are you supposed to send a resume or a CV? And what are you supposed to write in your resume? What are the things that you are supposed to know before you click that send button? Nowadays, your social media account also serve as your resume. Recruiters, companies, and other opportunities are actually looking and searching through Facebook, LinkedIn, and this means you have to be very aware on what are you supposed to write or to put in your profile in those social media, especially in LinkedIn, because nowadays a lot of people are actually using LinkedIn to search for candidates, to search for business partners, to search for speakers, trainers, and a lot more. So before you apply or contact that recruiter or that company, listen to this episode and learn from a recruiter with more than 20 years experience in recruitment, because I'm very certain that after listening to this episode, there's 1, 2, or even 3 things that you are supposed to know before you apply for your new job. Life mates, listen and learn. My special guest for this episode is originally from Denmark. He's a resident in Bangkok now for 25 years with 20 years experience as a headhunter, helping clients recruit their people in Indonesia, Tanzania, Kenya, Thailand, Sweden, and Denmark. His background is in airline business, in sales and marketing, and of course, management. He also had experience in freight forwarding and logistics, but for many, many years, he's been working in the recruitment field. Please welcome my special guest, Tom Sorensen. Hi, Tom.
Hey there, Arnie. Thank you for having me on your show. Looking forward to speaking to everyone.
Yes, and thank you so much for accepting the invitation.
My pleasure.
Yes, so let's start the ball rolling. My first question, Tom. A lot of people are confused between CV and resume. Can you please enlighten them? What's the difference between the two?
Oh, I love that question. And, and as they say, when they do magic on the stage, the magician always asks the person from the audience that is on the stage, do I know you? Have we ever met before? Have we planned anything? No. Just like tonight, right? We agreed you will shoot questions out of the blue, but thank you for starting with this very important question. And it's very important to distinguish between these two types, because, we all know that saying in Thailand, same, but different.
Different, yeah.
And that is
Yes.
exactly what you can say. So let me tell you, the CV, that's where it starts. The CV is the abbreviation for curriculum vitae. And if that's from Latin, Latin is the language that the doctors speak nowadays, right? But in the old days, it was a language from Southern Europe in particular. But curriculum vitae, if you translate that to English, it means, in my own words, your life journey. And that already gives an idea that this is probably quite a long document, because it's about your journey through life. And a CV will typically be long, and long meaning 4 pages, 5 pages, 10 pages. Now, it's a document that contains almost everything from where you went to school, almost from kindergarten and primary and secondary. You will have parts of articles you have published, very, very detailed document. So you can imagine it's almost the kind of document that you bring to a court of law, if you are involved in a court case, right? And the judge would like to see, everything. And you bring that very long document. Now, when it comes to introducing yourself on the job market, then research after research shows that recruiters or HR people take an average of 6 seconds, not to read, but to skim. Because, who can read anything in 6 seconds, right? That's impossible. So
That's right.
It's more skimming, right? They kind of look for certain things. And then the decision is, do I want to keep this because it looks interesting, or I didn't really find anything that sort of clicked. So boom, delete, and you're back in the hole where you came from, right? The resume black hole. So it's really important to remember the following. The purpose of a resume is not to get a job. And now you think I'm totally crazy, right? It's 8 o'clock. What has he been drinking? No, I haven't. So what I mean with that is the resume is to get you an interview. The resume, I could even say LinkedIn, and perhaps we will come back and talk a bit about LinkedIn, which is a similar and important profile that you need to take care of. So the resume is a document, it's a marketing pitch, it's your sales pitch, so that people reading your resume will say, whoa, we got to talk to this person, right? And that is all there is to the resume. So a resume is a summary of your CV. And in fact, the word resume is French. So if we had any French-speaking audience today, résumé is French, and it means short, brief, and in summary. That is the difference. So when you talk about job applications, job seeking, you should only use the resume that max 2 page. Now, you may have heard that in the US, where many things originate, there was a time, and if I say 10 years, it's probably 20. It's always like that, that they said 1 page is sufficient.
Oh.
Now, if you have heard that, please erase that from your memory, because it is not enough to only have 1 page. And luckily, nowadays we all know that a resume is 2 page, not 1, not 3 or more. It is a 2-page document. And then you will say, Tom, but my goodness, I've been working 25 years, and if I have to write everything, there's no way, even if I use font number 7 and I have no margins on the paper, there's no way I can get that. Okay, so here's the trick. What is important for anyone in my business is to see what you have done the last 10 years and maximum 15. Because if we go further back, we didn't have, or maybe we just started to have iPhones and let's say even LinkedIn came into our world there 15, 20 years ago, right? Exactly 19 to really be accurate. So there's no, it doesn't give us any meaning to see what you did 20 years ago, or even 30 years ago, or perhaps if you are as old as I, even 40 and 50. It doesn't matter. So it is all about focusing on your last 10 to 15 years. Now,
Not more than that, Tom, right? Not more than 10 or 15 years.
Yeah. So, you focus on what you have done the last 10 years, or let's say max 15. Now, if you have a work experience that actually is 20 or 25 and 30, do not provide details of these jobs, because we know it was a different time. We don't work like this anymore, right? Now, we know how the world works, right? So instead, what you do, if you have more than 15 years experience, on the second page, right? Because the first page is about, let's say an introduction. It's about your work experience. and then you come to page 2, another work experience, and then probably you hit 10, 15 years. And then you have a little bit about education that comes towards the end of page 2. And then you can say, if you want to make a note that you actually have some perhaps interesting industry experience or functional experience, you can say previous employment records, and then you can say something like sales and marketing positions in Southeast Asia within food and beverage, FMCG, for example. Or if you have worked for IBM, Coca-Cola, Starbucks, Google, and the famous companies, that you can just say, for example, again, you can say accounting and finance positions with major companies such as, and then you mention 3, 4, 5. So you don't specify details of each job. You don't specify details such as the period where you worked, right? Yeah. So
Tom, sorry, you already answered my question, because actually my follow-up question to that is, how about those people working for 20, 30, or 40 years? You already answered that. Now, let's go on to some people, they still put personal information. What's your take on that?
Sorry, I missed that.
They still put the personal information.
Oh, personal information. Oh, sorry, yeah, yes. I didn't.
Do you think? Yeah. Okay. Do you think they should still add the personal information in their resume?
Well, personal information is somehow still something that is common in Thailand or even in, let's say, Southeast Asia. But if you go to Europe and United States, you will never see anything about age, religion, marital status, children, and similar. Just not like that. And one of the reasons, in particular in the US, is that by law, recruiters, HR companies cannot ask questions about your age, your religion, and something like that. So in US and Europe, very normal that you don't put that in. But in Asia, interestingly, it is still. So when we talk about personal information, it is your nationality, and it is your marital status, and language capabilities, for example, right? Yeah. So I still see Thai people, in particular younger people, they would put in their height, their weight, yes, and then many other things, right? They would put in a photograph. And by the way, if we don't get to that point, do not ever put a photograph in your resume. Never. Absolutely never. And you think, wait, but they always ask that. Okay, I'll tell you why. It's a trick from the recruitment industry, because we want to see whether you have any hair. I don't. If you are wearing glasses, if you have, let's say Chinese would have a hair sticking out, because that means good luck, or whatever. And, it is a fact that there are some people who, when they judge another person, they judge the outside, and that colors, or what's a bit of filters, totally actually what they should, right? And that's, hey, what can you do for us, right? Do you have experience? So that is the reason why do not put a photograph. So the photograph can only do one thing. It can disqualify you, because the person looking somehow does not like your face. And I usually say, even if you are the most beautiful person, Miss Philippines or Miss Thailand or something else, and you sit there and you have the right pose, the young HR person might jump to a conclusion and say, oh my goodness, she looks high maintenance. She looks really expensive, and probably is used to people doing everything for her. And so she will not make her own coffee. She will not make her own photocopies. I don't think this person fits, right? So it's not about whether you are beautiful or not beautiful, because in any case, that is a perception depending on who looks at you, right? It's in the eyes of the beholder what is beautiful and what is not beautiful, right?
Yeah, but Tom, you see, even myself, I put photographs, because especially in Thailand, most of the companies, they require the photo.
Exactly.
So what's your take on that?
Well, there's only one reason why they ask for the photograph. Because if you are not qualified, if you're not qualified for the job, right?
That's right.
No photo is going to help you. So the only reason why they ask for a photograph is to see whether they like, whether they think you are handsome, or whether you, for some reason, has something, that they feel is not a good fit. It will never help you. I can guarantee that. It can only be a negative that you add a photograph. So my point is, if they ask for a photo, just don't do it. Because if they get a resume, right, and they start reading and they say, whoa, wow, great experience, fantastic. Oh my goodness, this is all the right thing, working for my competitor, absolutely fantastic. And then suddenly they realize, oh, wait a minute, where's the photograph? I guarantee no one is going to say, oh my goodness, this was the best candidate we've seen this week, but there's no photograph. So okay, then out. That will not happen. So a photograph will only be a negative thing. And that's why it's a risk. It's a risk if you add it.
Okay. Let me summarize for the first part, Tom. So use a resume in applying for a job, not a CV. At the same time, make sure that you only have 2 pages for your resume and no photographs. Now, my follow-up question, Tom, how can they make their resume outstanding? So it's going to be the one that the HR, the recruitment people, to look at, to read and select, and not the others.
Yeah. That's there is no one right answer to that. And even in people sometimes ask me, Tom, how come you know so much about this? Well, I have looked at resumes and CVs and profile from LinkedIn and other places, right, for the last 20 years while I have been in this business. So I claim to have seen more resumes, CVs, and LinkedIn profiles than the average person. I think everybody would agree on that because I'm in that business, right? So the question is, what is a good resume? How do you do that? What's the sequence? What kind of font do you use? What about the margins? Do you start with an objective? What do you do? And do you use header and footer? Do you use text boxes? Can you use color? It is very, very complicated. And in my webinar on the 25th of this month, because I do webinars every month. Oh. 1 month, it's about resume writing. It's 1 hour full of practical tips. I'm not selling anything. And so it's just me helping. The next month, it's LinkedIn best practice. And LinkedIn, we'll talk about that, I'm sure, in a while, right? So anyone can look me up, look for my webinars, sign up, and then I will teach you. But let me try and give you some ideas. What is a perfect resume? There are 2 types of resumes. There is one, and the most important one, that you need to use when you apply online. So you go to a company and you go to their career page and you find a job you want to apply for. And there is a box saying, click and upload your resume. And then up comes a window and you fill in your name and email. And then you upload your resume. And then you think that is all fine. Now, almost 100% of Fortune 500 companies in the US. Fortune 500 is a group of the largest companies in the United States. And I could then say probably also in the world, right? Yeah. But over 90% of those companies are using a software to manage the flow of resumes or CVs, as it may be sometimes, right? Because like Google and some of the big tech firms there, I mean, they will receive hundreds and hundreds of thousands of resumes, and they would need an army of people if they had to do that, right? So
that's right.
Probably 20 years ago, somebody developed an app. We didn't call it app at that time, right? But now we call it an app. But it's a software that sits behind that screen where you uploaded your resume. You cannot see it, right? But it's behind. So once you have uploaded your resume, behind the screen is that software, that application. And some of you may have heard this abbreviation, ATS. It stands for Application Tracking System. And it is the name of the software that is used. There are probably about 50 different types from different companies. Some of them are old, some of them are very basic, some of them are incredibly expensive, but really, really advanced. Now, the problem is companies will never say what kind of ATS that they use to actually bring in the resume and put that into some different folders. You don't know. So if your resume is not made with a certain layout, certain layout, then the information that the ATS will read from your resume and then put into different fields so that the recruiter can search in these fields. The information may not actually get into the right field. And I have an example actually now, it's probably maybe a couple of months back, right? But it's a good example. Somebody that actually happened to call me and say, hey, I uploaded my resume on your website, Tom. So can you just check, what do you think about it? So I looked him up, because when you upload a resume, there's no people, nobody will see it. It goes directly into the system. So how do we find you? Well, when we had to find candidates, we do like you do when you search on Google. We put in 5, 6, 7, 8 words that we want to find in resumes that are in our software, right? So that could be SAP, Salesforce.com, Southeast Asia, marketing, sales, whatever it may be.
Some keywords.
It could be 5 words, it can be 10 words, it depends, right? And then all the resumes that contain these words will come up, and then we just take one by one, right? And see what we like and what we don't like. Now, this particular guy that I talked about, he called me and I looked it up in my system, right? Because we don't see the resumes; they just go in there until we search, and then
that's the time you can see it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then so I looked at him and say, hey, wait a minute. The name, the name field in our system was not his name. And I kind of, whoa, that's strange. It was actually the street where he lived that was put in to the name field.
Oh, wow.
So I looked a little bit further. So some of the information that the ATS was trying to read was actually put into
different
fields. Not all of them, but some of them were in the wrong fields, so to speak, right? So when I go in and say I want to look for this in these fields, now if there's a street name instead of a company name, right, or something, we would never find it. So you can be the next Einstein, the smartest guy ever born in the world, right? We would never know if you are the second Einstein, right? Because if you are not following the principle of a standard resume. So what is a standard resume? Well, think about page 1. On the very top, your name. Second line, your address. Third line, telephone number, which is a mobile number these days, and an email. Right? Now, there are some, like the guy, for example, he had put his contact details in a text box on the left side on the margin. And the ATS is just a stupid software, right? And it was totally confused, right? Because the ATS is trained, so to speak, or programmed as it is, right? To think, okay, the first line will be a name, right?
That's right.
Because the computer cannot see, is it a name or is it the street? They don't know. They just see there's some words, right? A text. So that's why I'm saying that when you make a resume and it is a resume you have to submit online, you have to follow a certain sequence. And that also includes, do not use a header. which some people do for their name and contact
Yeah,
details,
that's
right?
right.
So
Yeah.
it comes
No
on both.
header.
Yeah, then it comes on page 1 and page 2, but don't use a header. Why is that? Some ATS, some of the cheaper ones and the older ones, when they go into your resume and they get stuck in the header where you have name and address, and the ATS is trying to find the keywords of qualification and so on, right? But obviously in the header where you have your name and street, there's not the words we're looking for. So then the ATS will come to conclusion that, oh, this resume is not relevant. And then, so header and footer, text boxes is the same. Now, bullet points, the sort of a normal, boring in a way bullet point, which is a black dot.
That's
Now,
right.
some people use arrows and something else fancy. Now, some ATS don't know what an asterisk or an arrow is, right? And then they get confused and they may not read and they may not populate, or the word we use is parse, P-A-R-S-E. To parse means a computer trying to read text from your resume and then put it into a certain system where we can find you, right?
So what's the best, Tom?
Mm.
Are you telling us that it's to use the bullet?
Yeah, so when you
standardize?
do your bullet points, then use just a normal bullet point, right? The black spot. Don't use anything else, right? So that's another example of, a resume that you need to upload online has to follow a certain sequence, right? With name, address, your contact details, a little bit about yourself, followed by your work experience, right? So company name, your position, the period you worked there, and then let's say some bullet points. And when you do a bullet point, never write more than 2 lines, right? Not 4 lines and then with a bullet point, because it looks like a block and it's not reader friendly. You have to have margins of maybe 2.5 centimeter each side. Your education is the second to last, almost at the bottom of page 2, unless you have recently graduated and you do not have permanent work experience.
Yeah, that's right.
Then after the name and contact details and your introduction, what you can say about me, or you can say career summary, or whatever you want to call it, then you can put in your education, right? Because that's sort of the only permanent you have had in your life so far. And then follow that by internships, community things. If you are teaching kids how to swim during the weekend, or teach them how to play badminton, that shows you have more than yourself, and you are sharing your generous time to help others. If you're in Red Cross or Rotary,
Some volunteer work.
Yeah, absolutely important.
Any fonts that is preferred by recruiters?
Yes, absolutely. When Microsoft came out way back, Times New Roman, some of you will know that font, right? Yes. Times New Roman was the default font of Microsoft. And that's how we came to know it, as kind of like that was the font for many, many years, right? But it is probably, let me think, it's probably more than 10, coming back, I think let's say about 10 years ago, Microsoft retired the Times New Roman and replace that by the font, which is today considered the best font. Well, I should say one of the best font. It is a preferred font because it's clean, it's nice, it's modern. Are you ready for the name? Calibri, C-A-L-I-B-R-I, Calibri.
Any size font, Tom?
That it depends. If you have a header, you can use size 14 to 16, the header of the paragraph.
That's right.
The name of the company and your position can be size 12 in Calibri, and then the normal breadth text 10 or 11. Yeah.
See.
You also got to be careful with colors. So do not, use the rainbow of colors. That is not a good idea. Yeah. So what you do is, if you, for example, what does look nice, a business blue sort of dark blue, not too shiny, but a dark blue or what is that called? That color between brown and yellow. Anyway, maybe it comes
Between brown and yellow.
Yeah, it has a name actually. It may come, but I mean the most, let's say, recommended color that you can use, let's say, for the company name and your position, is a dark blue. Yeah, or if you don't want to use it for your company name and position, you can use it for the header. For example, your introduction, right? My introduction or about me. When it comes to the header, professional experience or work experience, you can kind of make that. And then when it comes to education or when it comes to community
work
or something,
or
right?
volunteer,
You can use that, right? But be very sort of, don't be careful with the color, right? But it sometimes helps to sort of make it easier to read when you have color, because it shows where, okay, here, this is one, and let's say this is one subject, right? Like introduction and then work experience, right? So it makes it easier to follow. Yeah.
How about, because you mentioned about LinkedIn, of course, a lot of people are into LinkedIn now. And of course, a lot of recruiters and companies are actually also looking into LinkedIn profiles of people.
Yeah.
So what are they looking for in LinkedIn? How can people make their profile LinkedIn noticeable for the recruiters?
I mean, I forgot actually one thing before I answer the LinkedIn. I have a lot of things to say on the LinkedIn.
Yes.
I actually just remembered, I said there are two types of resumes. The most common one is the one we have talked about now, the one which is, it looks pretty boring, right? But that is necessary for the stupid ATS software to understand, right? So that is one. Now there is another one, and that is the one where you can use your best designer skills and you can use colors and you can use text boxes, you can use any bullet point you want, and you can use graphs and photos and you name it. That is the resume, still 2 pages, that you can use when you have actually already talked to somebody in a company where the person says, you know what, my goodness, that sounds like an interesting profile. Why don't you email me your resume? Now, in that case, you have already passed sort of the ATS, right?
One leg is already inside.
Yeah, because now you're already inside, right? So the only thing you have to make sure is you've got to ask this person, hey, John, before I send it to you, may I just ask, when I send you the resume, are you going to put it into your ATS? Because if he is, then you have the same problem. Then you're going to send him,
go back to the standard one.
Exactly. But if he says, no, no, I'm not going to put it. We don't have that kind of stuff, so just send it to me. Now, then you can go banana, right? And then you can send, the most advanced, fancy, and so on, right?
You can do everything you want.
Absolutely. Everything goes, right? Unfortunately, many resume writers and many recruiters do not know what I'm talking about, right? So come to the question about LinkedIn. LinkedIn started like a kind of a competitor to Facebook, and they actually set up the company in 2002 in San Francisco, but started commercial operation in 2003. So almost next year, it will be 20 years. But very quickly, for some reason, no idea how that happened, but it kind of started to turn into what it is today, right? One big database. And most people that are on LinkedIn are there for job opportunity reasons. Now, there are, of course, some people that are there because they are using LinkedIn as a sales and marketing for their company and for their products, right? And there is a difference in terms of what you add and what you put on, right? So I'm not going to today talk about what if you want to be on LinkedIn because you want to show your company and products, right? We're not going to talk about that. I'm talking about LinkedIn as a vehicle for you to present yourself, right? And here is lesson number 1. If you don't take care of your LinkedIn profile, please delete it. Actually, if you are in business, you should have a LinkedIn profile. But The problem is that if you don't take care of your LinkedIn profile, people will probably jump to conclusion that you're not professional, you're not up to date, because you have 16 links, 16 contacts only, right? You have no photograph of yourself. There's no background image. It's just awful. Now it is.
Sorry, Tom, to cut you. So this time with LinkedIn, a photograph is a must.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
So, well, the point is that, it's better not to be on LinkedIn than it is to be on LinkedIn with a bad profile, right? So, to everyone listening in, if you don't have time and you don't really care because you have enough money already, and you are in a place in your life where you couldn't care less, delete your LinkedIn profile, right? Because there will be people out there that somehow may know you, or it could be your customers, it could be your boss, it could be anyone, right? And you don't want to present yourself with a profile that really stinks. So what is a good LinkedIn profile? Well, LinkedIn continues to add new features on their platform. When you talk about LinkedIn, I like to start with what I call the LinkedIn shop window. Now, think about a shop window in a shopping mall. You come to the shop, you see the shop window, beautifully decorated, right? There's lights and spotlights. It's all absolutely fantastic. Why is that? Well, they want you to come into the shop, obviously, right? And use your money. So in a similar way, I call what you see on the screen when you open a LinkedIn profile, your own or somebody else's profile, you see the rectangular background where you may have an image or you may not. Then you have a photograph, you have your name. Just below your name is what we call the headline. And that's sort of about it, what you see on the screen. If you want to see anything else, right, you've got to scroll down.
That's right.
Now, it's the first impression is what I call it, right? So if somebody finds you on LinkedIn and they open what I call the shop window, now, if that looks absolutely incredible and it looks cool, there's a really good chance that they will scroll down and read about you, see your work experience, and then reach out. So in a similar way, as I mentioned on the resume, why do we have a resume? Why do we have a LinkedIn profile? It's not to get a job. It's to get somebody so interested in you that they reach out and invite you for a meeting. That is what it is. Because once you are in a meeting room, in an interview, then, eye contact, it's body language, it's everything else. And that is where you get the job, right? I mean, if you're good enough and you want the job. So both profiles are marketing. And let me talk about that, because I think we all know what a shop window on LinkedIn looks like. That rectangular that is on the very, very top is a space that you can now use for free to add an image. It did not used to be like that. In the past, you had to have a certain premium account where you paid money for actually certain features. Not like that anymore. It's for free. So what you need to do is do not just let LinkedIn add, as they always do, that default gray color. Looks terrible. So you need to find an image, and you can go to Google Image. And if you are in HR, you can say image for HR, image for learning and development, sales and marketing, supply chain, whatever. Or you can say oil and gas industry, freight forwarding industry, anything on Google Image. Or if you go crazy, there's a software called Canva. Another software.
Yes. A lot of people are using that one now.
Yeah, that's a little bit like do it yourself. So if you're not used to sort of moving around, it's a little bit tricky. But you can use Canva to make that image really exactly what you want. Now, the key here is to make sure that the image has enough pixel. Pixel, what is that? Well, it's any photograph consists of dots. Yeah, many small dots. Now, the more dots that you have, the more clean, crispy, and clear the picture and the photo will be. The less it becomes grainy, a little bit so like you have had Vaseline on the lens, and online, it's not good. So you got to look up what is the required pixel for a LinkedIn background image to look good. It is like something like minimum 1,000 times 350 to 400, right? That's sort of a good size. But if you find one which is 400 times 200, don't even bother. It will look terrible, right? So you got to make sure, find the right one. Now, when it comes to the photograph, it's not any photograph. We need you to take a headshot. Headshot is probably, if you can see me now, this is a headshot, right? It goes from your elbows and then up, or perhaps a little bit
Higher than
sort
the
of,
chest.
yeah, and then up, right? Now, you got to look into the camera. You got to look into the camera. Put on your best Mona Lisa smile, and wear something that you do when you are working, right? So if you are just normally just wearing a shirt, no tie, and suit, which I've taken off before I came on today. But if this is sort of the normal, if you're normally in a suit, right, then that's what you do. If you do not really have a really good photograph of yourself, then go to a professional photographer. And if you are in Bangkok, I can tell you that a price you will get actually 70 or 80 raw shots, right? So he's going to take 75 photographs, right? And then the photographer is going to pick 5, and then he will prepare them so that you can use them on social media, on LinkedIn, and so on, right? And the others you can keep, and you can pick them up, and then you can actually make them into yourself, right? But he's going to pick the 5 best. The price is, the cheapest one I have found is about 3,000 baht for all of that. And the most expensive, I think, was 7,000 or 8,000.
Wow.
that is, I mean, I understand that's money, right?
Right.
If you only get 15,000 a month, that's a lot of money. I understand that. But rather than trying to take a selfie and so on, right? If you're really serious, then use that amount of money and get a real professional headshot. That is how important the photograph is. And LinkedIn actually, and I can't remember the numbers, but they come out and say, we can prove that with a photograph of yourself, you get 21 more times looks and 36 more requests to connect, or whatever it is, right? So there's no doubt. And do not use a company logo on your personal profile, and do not use a cartoon or something like that.
Something cute and logos like that. Yes.
Not at all.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. And remember, there's a difference between Facebook, Instagram, sort of on one side, and then LinkedIn on the other side, right? So because when I teach LinkedIn best practice, which my next one will be in June, I actually show some examples of really, really crazy photos I found on LinkedIn. Somebody standing in Speedo out next to the pool with a lizard on his head, right? And another one was solo with a mask. You can't see anything, and so on. It's hilarious.
A big no, right?
Yeah. Now, last thing I want to mention on the shop window, where your name is, right? Just below your name is a line that LinkedIn has picked for you, which is from your most recent, or of course current, if you are in a job already. If you have a job, that company and title will by LinkedIn be copied and then put in right below your name. Now, unless you're working for Google or Apple, if you're working for almost any other company, then you should not let LinkedIn choose what they want to put there. So luckily, there is a pen, like a pencil, right? All the way to the right. You click that, and then up opens a window where you can then write what you want. And there are 3 things that you need to think about. It's your let's say, title. So you can say manager, general manager, managing director, CEO, then followed by what is your function. Function means sales, marketing, HR, supply chain, production, whatever it may be. And then the last part could be a geographical area. It could be Southeast Asia, it could be Thailand, it could be the Philippines, or it could be something unique, like 5 ISO certifications, or a SAP and Salesforce super user, whatever it be, right? There are actually 160 characters available, which actually corresponds to 4 lines, which most people say it's too much. Because when you have 4 lines, you cannot just look at it once and then you get it. You have to read 4 lines, and many people don't have time. So the best practice is use only what will come into 2 lines, because when you have 2 lines, you could just kind of, you don't have to read it, right? You could just look at it.
It's easier for people to read.
Exactly.
And look.
Yeah.
See.
Yeah.
Tom, we have a very limited time. And thank you so much for all the tips that you gave to the listeners on resume writing and LinkedIn. Probably I can invite you again for something else. I have 3 standards questions that I ask my guests. And the first one, Tom, is you have experienced recruiting people and especially the management team. What do you think is the greatest lesson you've learned out from this profession?
Yeah. As we said in the beginning, we have on purpose not agreed that I should know your questions. So what is the biggest, let me say something and then my brain is going to still work on it, right?
Okay, sure.
Now, recruitment is a fantastic business because it is a combination of sales and marketing and HR skills. Sales and marketing, before I can actually get somebody to use our company to help them, and what is it we do? Perhaps as you just mentioned, we specialize in headhunting top executives. Yeah, that's what we do. What is a top executive? It's a managing director or CEO, and then the people who report to that person, right? So in Thailand, a salary where we usually get in, what's that? Will typically be 200,000 baht a month. Yeah, that's sort of where we get in, and then there's no limit on the other way, right? So the sales and marketing is to get business from companies that need help. When we then approach candidates, then very often, I would say 9 out of 10 candidates have a job, right? The unemployment in Thailand, unemployment rate went almost up to 2% during the COVID. It's on the way down to 1% again. So that is really nothing. And we know at the moment there's a huge demand for people at, let's say, from low to mid, and especially because people from your country are very incredibly good in hospitality. And my circles in the hospitality are telling me, I spoke to a general manager just actually before I came back home, because I was moderating an event, and was it last night or was the day before? It was the day before, Tuesday. I was in an event that is especially for travel and tourism people. I used to be the vice president in the board there, and they all complain they cannot find people. So if you have a skill set that would fit into hospitality, then do not necessarily just go to recruiters, because most clients want Thai people. So you have to go directly to the company. You have a better chance for success if you approach the company, in this case, the hotel or the travel agent directly. The reason is that companies that come to us, they would say, we need Thai executives, right? Now, it's not particularly strange, because you go to Denmark, where I come from, you go to the Philippines, and you ask, how many of your citizens do you actually place because your clients want? And it's the same. 80 or 90% of clients that come to recruiters, they want people from that country. And then there's a very, very small balance, right? And what clients ask me is, hey, Tom, I'm open to everything, but I want to have somebody that is already in Thailand, that has proven they can work with, in this case, the Thai people, right? Okay. As I was saying all of this, I was trying to think, what do I answer to that question there, Arnie? And I'm not quite sure, because I've heard many lessons. Oh my goodness.
Maybe one particular lesson that you think it has an impact in your career as a recruiter.
Yeah. I think it would be a couple of things that come to mind. One is that when I started this 19, almost 20 years ago, I had been a head of HR in a very big consulting firm in Thailand, and be managing director for companies in Africa, general manager, blah, 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 right? But actually, I had no clue about the recruitment industry. And when I was on that other side, and I tried to get hold of recruiters, because I thought that's the way you do it, right? That you call up and say, hi, this is me. And, nobody answered, nobody replied, nobody wanted to speak to me. And I just couldn't believe it. What the hell is going on here, right? What's wrong with these people? Until I then came on this side, because
the other side,
yeah, because I wanted to teach everybody, that you can actually have courtesy on your list there. You can be polite, you can be helpful, right? But I also realized that if I would speak to all the people that invite me for a cup of coffee, I would have died long time ago from caffeine shock, right? Because I would be sitting in Starbucks, every single day. And obviously I would not be able to do my business, right?
Yeah,
so
that's right.
But when I came into this business, it was about, I read, my goodness, I'm looking at my bookshelf, tons and tons of books, a lot of things that are available on the internet. I had to really study. I wanted to learn the craft. I wanted to be the best in what I do. So one learning there is, when you get into something, then make sure that you really spend time learning, and keep learning. We know that lifelong learning, right? Have you heard about this?
Of
Lifelong
course.
learning, right?
I consider myself a lifelong learner.
Exactly. Now, there are people, there are some people that think this concept of lifelong learning is all about learning how to live a long life. Yeah, did I say that's right? Yeah, I did, right?
Yeah, you did.
But obviously that is not what this is about, right? It's not about how you learn to live a long life. No, it's about to always be hungry for more information, study and read, subscribe, because the internet is full of free stuff, right? So subscribe to news, and that, I think, is what has kept me in front, or at least together with a few others, perhaps, in front in this very competitive recruitment market, where I'm the most expensive in the market, and where I take the money first. Very, very unusual. So people charge, some of them even less than half, and they only want the money at the very end if they are successful. So my value proposition is quite different, right? So study, perfect your skill, whatever it is, and continue, because there are people behind you that are trying to catch you and push you aside and then pass you, right? Do not let that happen.
So learn, never stop learning. Second
Absolutely.
question, Tom. Second question.
Yeah.
What decision you made in the past that has a huge impact of who you are now? It's either personally or as a recruiter.
Well, I think it goes back to when I was I started. Well, okay, let me start from the beginning here. When I was 16 years old, I finished 10 years of school in Denmark. Back then, and because we talk about 50 years ago, right? It was normal that, very few people went to university in Denmark back then. Now it's definitely totally different, right? So I applied to get a job in a big company, and I got the job, and that sort of started my career when I was 16. 3 or 4 years later, so I was kind of still end of my teenage, I somehow got very attracted to South America, because I thought, hey, it's warm, colorful, cold drinks and hot women and so on. That at that time was just what I needed, according to the doctor, right? So I said, how do I make myself sort of stand out in my big company at the time? So I said, hey, I should learn Spanish, right? That's what they speak in South America, except in Brazil, but that's very close, right? Portuguese anyway. So I actually started to study Spanish. I got a degree. I studied hard for 4 years. And because I kind of looked ahead, right? I knew that what happened. Well, the company said, we have a project in Taiwan. You've got to have a do a feasibility study. I say, hey, whoa, wait a minute. Taiwan, what is that? Are they Spanish? No, but, don't mind, just go there, right? So I came back, and shortly after, the company I worked for at the time wanted to open offices, one in Indonesia and one in Malaysia. And they said, Tom, you did a good job there with the project. We want you to take one of the jobs there. And I said, hello, I speak Spanish. I want to go to Spain. I said, no. Okay, later, Tom. So I got the job in Jakarta in 1983, which is that's 40 years ago, right? Almost 40 years ago, right?
Yes.
So the big decision, I wanted to learn Spanish, right? That was one big decision. Then I got sent to Indonesia 40 years ago, almost 40 years ago. And that started my overseas career. And I went from Indonesia to Kenya. I went to Tanzania. I came to Thailand. And then actually I went back to Denmark for 4 years before I then returned
to Thailand permanently.
Yeah, exactly. So actually, when I say 25 years, it's actually 23. It's at 26, isn't it? Yeah, 23 plus 3 or 22 plus 3, whatever. Yeah. So these are some of the really, I would say, major things why I'm here. It was my plan to actually go back to Indonesia, set up a company, become a millionaire, and then go to Bali and have somebody else to manage my business in Jakarta, and I could just walk around in my sarong. But then in 1997, was that the crisis, the currency crisis?
Yes,
right?
That's right. Yes.
Yeah, the Yam Gung crisis in Thailand, right, where the whole thing collapsed. And then I decided, I left Indonesia. Luckily, I then came to Thailand, where I said, I'm not gonna get married or anything else. But luckily, somebody changed my mind. Today, my wife for more than 20 years, right? So that was absolutely fantastic. Yeah.
So
those
are
were some
the
of the big things in my life.
Wow. Last question, Tom. If you or someone else is going to write your life as a book, what will be the book like, and what will be the title?
I think it's going to be 500 pages because
oh wow,
because I have lived a life that I will live again anytime. Very, very few regrets, I have to say, right? We made a few mistakes, but you learn from the mistakes, right? And you move on. But generally speaking, it's going to be a long book. I feel I have lived the life of a couple of people back to back. That is how incredibly lucky I feel I am that I'm living in Thailand. I have the job, I have the family and friends and all that. It would be probably something like, if I look at the last 20 years, it would be The Secret Life of a Headhunter. That could be the title, and hopefully that would be selling some books. I got to find somebody who to write it, right? In fact, I have just finished a book, and I was just talking to the company I'm using to how we actually, what do we do now, right? So it will, and it's about career for people over 50. And that will be available on my website. Probably, I don't know how long time it's going to take.
Wow.
Right?
Do you have the name of the book, Tom?
Well, it's going to, no, not 100% yet, right? But it's going to be something like career something for executives over 50 or something like that. I'm still working a little bit. Yeah. Some people I meet that I think have had an incredible life. I said, oh my goodness, you should write a book, right? Because their life has been absolutely incredible. And I never actually thought about it, your question there, and I should write a book, right? Because my goodness, I've experienced so many things, I've climbed mountains, and when I went to Mount Kenya, the tallest mountain with a couple of friends, right? and we went up 3 o'clock in the morning, and we were with a guide almost at the very top. When suddenly the weather became terrible and we almost lost the way, we managed to get down to the hut again. You know, a story I can talk about for a long time, and so many other crazy things. You know, and sometimes, you know, I'm still alive. Yeah, life is great. Good
So
to be alive.
the more you should write a book, Tom,
That's true. That's true.
and leave a
That's true.
legacy. A lot of people can learn from the lessons, the experiences, especially in recruitment.
True.
And I'm sure it's going to be something for people to read.
I hope so. Yeah.
Thank
I
you
will think
so
about it.
much, Tom. Thank you so much. I hope we can have another opportunity to talk, and probably as a headhunter, I mean, especially in the management. And again, thank you so much for saying yes to my invitation. And to all my life mates, I hope you've learned something from tonight's episode, especially if you're looking for a job, you're applying out there for a career, not a job, but a career. And of course, you can search for Tom Sorensen in LinkedIn. You can watch his webinars and learn more aside from the things that we discussed from this episode. And I'm sure there's a lot more to learn from Tom Sorensen. If we can have the opportunity, I will invite him. So please, all my light mates, listen and learn.
Thank you.